Hi, I'm Katrin Rashan, and I'm interviewing Sally Friedman. And today is November 19th, 2015, and also my partner Deanna is filming. And Sally, let's start. What year were you born, Sally?
June 12, 1926.
Where are you from?
Poland, Goucher.
Would you mind spelling it out loud? Right.
I spelled Goucher when I was born. What was it like?
Dialloszczycl. All one.
CE.
Oh, CE.
Yeah.
CE.
Goucher, Poland.
So, did you know anybody that was arrested on the night of Kristallnacht? Anyone in your family?
No.
No. Mm-mm. Who did you live with in Jersey?
With my parents, mother and father, we were 5 children. And in 1936, we had a big flood in Goucher. So we left, and I had a brother in a bigger city. So we moved there because everything was destroyed. So from 1936, I lived in Sosnowiec. Sosnowiec, 1936.
Sosnowe? See?
Yeah, right, Goucher, Sosnowiec. Wait a minute. Sosnowiec, yeah.
Okay. So, what was life like there after?
Well, it was very hard because in Goucher we had a good life, had parents, grandparents. Then when we had the flood in 1926, 36, 35, everything was destroyed. So we went to Sosnowiec. It was very hard to start life again because in the smaller town we were already had a business and everything. Then when everything was destroyed, we moved to Sosnowiec. It was very hard. So I continued with school, but I could not go to Jewish school because I had my parents. I had to help them because when you come into a different city, you know, you don't know nobody, you don't have any money. So my father used to go to a different city, buy fruit, and we would sell fruit on the streets. So I went to public school, but to go to a Jewish school, this was after I had to help my parents because I was one of the youngest. I had a younger brother. He was born in 28. So he had, being that he's a boy, he had to learn Hebrew and for the bar mitzvah, but a girl, you know, so I had to help out my parents. So I went to public school, and then from 3 to 5, I couldn't go to the Jewish school. I had my parents because going home at night, they would be robbed, so 2 people, you know, so I helped them. So this was my life from 20, from 36 till 39. Then the war started in 39. Crystal Night, we were not involved because we lived in Sosnowiec, and Crystal Night was in Germany, somewhere around there. So we were not involved in that. But in 1939, the war started.
Okay.
So when the war started, September 1st, I was supposed to graduate, and once the war started, already everything went down. So then in 1940, they were shooting the streets and they were shooting the synagogues, and I was there with a friend of mine, and I fell and I broke my leg. And you can see it now after 70 years, I still have pain and the whole leg is crooked. So then when my sister came to pick me up, she couldn't pick me up, so my father came. He took a chance because the Germans were already shooting. So now what happened, they took me home and they had to put me under the bed because the Germans were coming into all the buildings and looking for Jews. So then in the morning, my leg blew up. So they had no choice but to take me to the hospital. So my father couldn't go with me because he had a beard. I have pictures in my room. He had a beard, and so my sister took me, and she was older. She was I was born 26, and she was born in 1920. So she took Miriam. So she took me to the hospital, and there was a Jewish. Yes.
Where were you when you hurt your leg?
In Sosnowiec.
In Sosnowiec.
Yeah, because we moved 10 years later from 26 to 36. We lived in Jaworzhice. From 36, I lived in Sosnowiec.
Were you nervous going to the hospital?
No, because I was in pain and the leg was very swollen. So when we got to the hospital, there was a Jewish doctor, I still have the papers, Dr. Plavna. And the Germans took over the hospital, so when they came in and they asked, "Was ist los? What's happening?" And the doctor said, "She broke a leg." And then he said in German, I understood because of the Jewish, he's very familiar to German. So the German came in and he said, "Was ist los? What's happening?" And he said, "She broke a leg." And he said, "Cut off the leg," to the doctor, the German. Cut off the leg. So the doctor said to my sister, "If I cut off her leg, I might as well kill her because she won't be able to work." So they put in a cast in the middle of the night. The doctor took a chance and he went against the German and he put on a cast in the middle of the night. They took me home. So this was in 1940 that I broke my leg. I have the paper. So now they were like watching me and not to complain. My sister said not to complain. And in 1942, I got the, so before that, the Germans came out with the order that if one person goes to concentration camp, the other one can stay. So my sister went at 41, so she could cover my mother. And then they lied. Once they sent me to camp, so I went to camp. My sister went in 41.
Which one did your sister go to?
She went to Neusalz in Germany.
Okay.
She went to work there. When Neusalz was put out?
Yes, if you don't mind.
No, if I can speak. Neusalz.
Oh, where was your sister when?
What type of camp was she in?
What type of concentration camp was she in? Was she in a work camp? Was she?
She was in a work
A
camp.
work camp.
All the camps at that time were working
Work
camps.
Okay.
And you said you went to one, right?
Yes.
Right.
In
Which one did you-
1942, I went
Mhm.
because the Germans came out now with the new rules. They needed 300 people to work. Okay? So there was a guy who was in charge, and his name was Marin. I like to write his name, Marin.
Did you go to the same work
No,
camp as?
no,
No.
no.
What was the name of the camp you went to?
I'll get to it.
Okay.
No results. And I went to, she went to 42. I went in, yeah, so the guy came out with a new law
Mhm.
that he needed 300 people to go to a working camp. So being that the rich people could pay off,
Mhm.
they took the poor people, and we were poor.
Mhm.
So I went in 42. I went in 42 to camp. And then I found out that my mother and my brother went to Auschwitz, and my father, being that he was a baker in Auschwitz, so they needed a baker. So they sent him to Schroeder. This was Schroeder. Not a camp, a ghetto.
Mhm.
So my father went to a ghetto because they need a worker, a baker. So I was separated in 1942. I didn't hear nothing from them. As a matter of fact, I had a cousin that was in a different city. My father couldn't write, so she wrote letters for me, and I have the letters. I still have them. I kept them over 70 years. It's in Polish because she was in touch with my father, and she wrote to me. But when she wrote the letters, I didn't get to in camp. She wrote it to a worker that I worked in the factory. And I was friendly with a German woman, and the letters came to her. And then she came over and she gave me the letters so I could read them. So this was in 42, and I stayed till 45. In 45 I was liberated. But through the camp, when I went to a camp, the first camp was Dunkeltal.
Dukel.
X.
X.
No.
No.
Dunkeltal. O-T-L-L, that's an L.
Okay.
Dunkeltal. I was in Dunkeltal from 42 till about 43. But what happened during that time was, Dunkeltal wasn't bad, but then in 43 it became a concentration camp, and they took us to Oberaustadt,
What's that?
a big camp. There was like 1,000 people. Over there from 1943, see, Dunkeltal was not too bad. But Oberaustadt became a concentration camp. And they gave me a machine as long as this room. and it had 300 spools. We were putting in flax, and from flax they were making cotton. So I had a machine that had 300 spools, and we had everybody working there, prisoners of war. So they were, if the machine broke, they could stop the machine. We could not. We had to put in our fingers like this into the spool to stop it. You could lose a hand, so we could not stop the machine, but the prisoners of war could. So I worked by that machine more than 2 years. And one day I fell back. So they take you to a sick room. If you cannot work, they take you to a sick room, and they don't feed you because you are going to Auschwitz. You are going to be killed. But my luck, if I don't eat, I get well. That's how I survived. So when they kept me there a week, and my sister Miriam, when she got sick, she didn't get well. So they sent her to Auschwitz. So they wait like a transport for about 10 people to send to Auschwitz. Meanwhile, they take over another country, so they have the people to replace us. So she was killed, and with me, I got well, and they sent me back to work. But before all that, we went through living hell. When we got to the camp to Oberwalstadt, we had to be dressed, we had to be nude, no clothes, and they checked us over how we are. So at that time, I was young. I was like maybe, I went to camp in 1942, and I was born at 26. So I was born 26. So I was like 14 years old. So we had the period, and everybody else. So the next day, nobody got the period. They gave us something in the food. And a lot of girls went crazy when you stopped it. It didn't affect me. So there was like, so I tried, there were like three.
Do you know what they gave you? Or
No.
No.
We had a soup, and the next day everybody was clean, because they called us Juden swine, Jewish pig, because the blood was running. So the next day, everybody, but the tragedy was that there were three sisters, and you said like this, to the left and to the right. So one of the sisters from the three of them, they said she's going to the left, she's not healthy enough to work. So then I decided I wanted to bring my sister to be together with me. So if she's hungry, I can give her my food. You can help one another. When I saw what was going on, that when they took away one sister and the two of them there, the place was screaming unbelievable. So I said, I'm not going to bring over my sister. I don't want to go through what they went through. But I was late anyway. She already was sick, and she already was in Auschwitz. So that before I decided I'm not going to bring her, she wasn't even alive. So,
How did you find out that your sister?
okay, I'll tell you how I found out. What's happening, you know, like I said, we were like parts of a car. If somebody gets sick, they get sick, they kill him. Then meanwhile they're taking over other countries. So they brought over other people. That's it. They took another country, like Hungary went into war much, much later. Poland was the first one that we started with 39. And the other countries later on, they took over. So they brought over other people. It just turned out that a girl came over to our camp, to the place, and she said, I saw your sister going into the gas chamber. So I had first hand that she already was dead.
But at this time, you didn't know about any of your other family members, like your mother or your father?
We knew that they were like Judenrein, like all the Jews, they took them, either they killed them, they didn't have any more camps. You see, at that time, I was like very upset that I was poor, that I was chosen to go. At the same time, it helped me, because later on, like 43, 44, they had no more work for the people. So that's when the people went to Auschwitz.
So because you were poor and you were the first chosen to go to the work camps,
yes, right.
that saved you in some sort of sense.
That's why it saved me, because I could still have work in a factory, and I was young. But the rest of them, they had no more place, and they were taking over countries one after another, that they had plenty of people. But me, because my sister, she went willingly, like they needed people. So she said, because they said, if I can replace somebody, she can live. So she replaced my mother. Like she's working and she's taking care of her mother, so she can go to camp. Later on, they had no more places where to send them. So with me, my sister she went willingly because to save her mother. I went already because a rich person paid off. So that's when I went. My little brother was too young. He went with my mother to Auschwitz. And my father still lived there in that ghetto because they needed him to work. And then later on, when people came to the camp and they told me that they shot my father. They didn't need him anymore. And when it came to me, when the war was really like coming towards an end, I was working, and they call it like, the Russians were like coming in. So they were calling, we should dig ditches so the tanks couldn't come in to save us. But all the stuff what I went through, for that reason, I never even wanted an interview, because I felt I didn't suffer enough. I didn't go to the gas chambers. But I suffered that my family went. So that's why whenever there was some kind of, like I went to all the organizations, whatever they had, they always wanted me to speak. And I said, I have nothing to say, because I didn't go through the gas chamber. My family did, because I stayed in that camp that I worked, and then that camp, and the only one that saved us was the Kruger, the one that owned the factory. When we were getting people in from the different camps, like they replaced people from different cities. So when it came to
I have a question for you then. What was liberation like? Can you describe it?
The day of liberation.
Liberations was different for different people. In our camp, when we saw that the Germans were losing the war, because people would come from different camps, so we were liberated by the Russians. And what had happened, when the Germans were like trying to run away, the big guys, what they did, all the bad things, they started to run away. And then they brought in, if you think that the Germans were bad, we got the Russians that were worse. They put us to dig ditches because they wanted to stop the tanks to come in. So they brought in those Russians, they were like animals. And whoever couldn't dig fast enough, they hit him and they fell into the grave. So then they took some of them, some camps they took walking. People died and walking. So we stayed there, we saw the Russians coming in. And they saved us.
How did you end up in Maryland?
Oh, wait, you are ahead of yourself.
With myself.
Yeah, way ahead.
Way ahead.
Way ahead.
Wait, like what happened
Yeah.
after the Russians came and that's
When the Russians came, we started going by train, going to the city that we were born. And I went back to Sosnovitz.
Okay.
And in Sosnovitz, I found nobody. So then I saw a cousin that she was from Auschwitz, came to our camp. And when I saw her, her name was Fela Schweitzer. And they said to me, two sisters, Fela Schweitzer and Malka Zabader. And they said, Sally, we cannot take care of you because we are looking for our husbands. The two of them were married. But there is a second cousin that was my father's first cousin. And he survived with 2 children. And I'm going to give you the address and you're going to go to him. And I went to him and he had family in Buffalo. So did I. So he said, okay, you come with us. But then I couldn't go with them because I had a different name. So he went with his 2 children to Buffalo. And then a year later, that I stayed in DK camps. And a year later, they took me there to Buffalo. So that's when I went to Buffalo. And in Buffalo...
This is still in Poland?
No, this is America.
America, okay.
This is in America. We went to Buffalo, this was in 1946, when the war ended in 45. So I had nobody in 45, so the UJA took care of us.
You said you had a new name. Do you remember what it was?
Oh, my maiden name?
Oh no, you said you had a new name when you came to America, that you had to change your name.
No, I didn't check. My maiden name was Salanyamova, my maiden name. That was my maiden name when I went to Buffalo. And in Buffalo, they said, I want you to make it Sally. That's all you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And Sally
That's
was...
okay. That's why I
Yeah,
got
right.
confused. Yeah, it's S-A-L-A, and then this is your last name, N-I-E-M-O-V-A.
Yeah, that was my maiden name.
Okay, so
But
this
in
is the name you
Buffalo-
were born with then.
Yeah, yeah. But Sally, they said in Buffalo,
Where's Buffalo? Which state?
New York State.
New York.
Yeah. So I stayed in Buffalo a year. I went to night school, Who remembers the night school? And then I said, I don't like Buffalo. So I had a vacation. I worked in a factory, because that's all I could do, because I had no schooling. I worked in a factory. And I said, I went to Buffalo. I went to Brooklyn. And in Brooklyn, I had a lot of friends that we were in camp together. We went to school together. So I said, what am I doing in Buffalo? I want to live in Brooklyn. So I went back to Brooklyn, and I met my husband there.
What was his name?
Yeah, Victor Friedman.
Okay.
And I worked I was in Buffalo from 46. We got married in 49.
Okay.
What's my husband's name?
Is that you two in the picture?
Okay. Okay. This is my mother and father, Tauba and Tzvi.
This one?
My mother,
And your father.
my father. My sister, that was Miriam, that was killed. And my brother, Leiberiven, that was killed in Auschwitz. Now there was another sister and a brother, they just passed away. I would say a year or 2 years ago. They went to Russia because when the war started and they were looking for young people, so there were like 300 men registered for the army in 1939, and they killed all 300. So my sister and my brother, they went to Russia. She was married, she lost her husband in Russia in the war. Her name was Fela, and my brother was Moshe. And this is like Harrison, and this was my husband, Victor Friedman.
Thank
We
you.
were- Yeah, we were married like 46 years.
This is
This is when we got married. It was a very good marriage. And I had 2 children, Terry and Philip.
2 children.
These are Terry's husband's family.
What did you do after you got married?
I worked in a factory for about 70 years.
7 years?
7 years.
70 years.
I think I retired maybe, I'm 89 now. I worked in a factory. In Buffalo, I worked in a factory. Then when I went to Brooklyn, and then when I got married, we went to Jersey, and I worked in Bayonne.
What would you do?
Everything was factory. I had no education,
Mhm.
so I worked in the
Did you sew in the factory?
yes,
Mhm.
in the sewing factories, and then I worked in a bakery, Manischewitz, that they make matzahs and all those cakes. But I worked in the factory in Buffalo. I was a machine operator. I was making like 300 pennies, 8 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, but I was very fast. I was making like binding in the underwear.
Mhm.
And when I worked in Buffalo, and I was working on clothing, when I came to New York, and I wanted that job, and they said the union won't allow women to work on that job because I was making $20 a week,
Mhm.
and the guys were making like $300 a week,
Wow.
so they wouldn't give the work to. So I went to underwear, and I was making nice money there. I was making $100 in 1949.
1949.
Did you like working in the factory, or?
I had no choice. Who's going to support me?
Mhm.
When I came to this country, I never collected a penny.
Mhm.
I went to work right away, and I lived in a furnished room.
Mhm.
I had no choice. I had nobody. And I paid like I lived with the cousins. I paid a rent. I went to night school. Oh, one story was so scary that I even said, I wish I was in concentration camp again.
Really?
So what happened, I went to Buffalo and I was like, everybody wanted to see me like I had horns, you know? So I went to one cousin, I went to another cousin, and then a third one, she said to me, Sally, I want you to go to this cousin. You go here, you go there, you go here. I'm like a good girl, I listen what they tell me. And I'm going, and my God, I didn't know where I was. I had no language. I speak no language. And I'm walking back and forth and back and forth. I don't know where I am. No police, no nothing. And I'm walking. I stop a car. The guy kept on going, and then he turned back. And I said to him, I knew like a few words lost, and I knew the address where I lived, 56 Rent Avenue, that one from Europe that I stayed with them. So I knew that address. Where I was going, I didn't know the address. So I was like walking and crying, and I said, at least in camp, I had a bed where to sleep, and over here I didn't know what's going to happen. So the guy stopped, pulled back, stopped the car, came over, and I said, lost. And I knew 56 Rent Avenue, but I stayed with a cousin that I lived with them. So he said, okay, I'll take you home. And I said, oh, no. I said, show me where to go. And I'm like pointing with my hand, show me where to go. And he said to me, I'm a half an hour away from where I live, 56 Rent Avenue. I gotta take you home because you won't make it. So I put my faith in God that he's not gonna rape me or kill me. And he took me home. I get home to my cousin because nobody was looking for me because they always thought that I was by somebody else. So nobody called, nobody inquired. So now I'm like, I get to the house, my cousins get together, they came down, and I said, where were you? I said, over there I can speak. Yiddish I can speak, Polish, English I couldn't. So I told them, so they said to me, in this country, we don't stop cars. I said, in this country, I said, you don't send a person, a girl, to go by herself. So I finished off with them, and that's when I decided Buffalo's not for me.
Okay.
And I went back to, and I had like when we were coming after the war, like we were coming, and they said to me, yes. So I stayed with, I come in after war, and they put me in a room with one girl and 7 guys.
Who's there?
Who's they?
The organization.
That helped you come to the States?
The UJA.
Okay.
Because we were on the ship. We were coming to America. So they put me in a room. Yeah, I couldn't go with those cousins because they had a different name.
I see.
Because we had like a grandmother, 3 grandmothers married like 3 guys. So my father was one of the cousins.
I see.
And he had a name Yamova. And the other guys had name Lefkovich.
I see.
So I could not go with them. And I had to wait for the next ship. So when the next ship came, I had to wait in a DP camp until I am not staying in a room with 7 guys and 1 girl. The girl didn't mind. So there was a couple that were married,
Mm-hmm.
and in South Sokolic, and they saw that I was crying, and they said, "You're gonna stay with us."
Mm-hmm.
So then when I left Buffalo, I was in contact with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought me to Brooklyn.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's how I said it.
And then you met your
That's-
husband and everything happened.
And in Brooklyn, I met my husband. I went to night school,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I got married, had a couple of kids. A very hard life.
Mm-hmm. How did you end up in Maryland?
In Baltimore
Oh,
specifically.
Baltimore.
Yeah.
That's a good story. My husband died now 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 years, I lived by myself.
What year did he pass?
My husband died in 2010.
2010.
Mhm.
Okay.
In 2012, I stayed by myself, and then I broke my hip.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And when I broke my hip, my daughter came, my son came. I have a son in California,
Mm-hmm.
Philip, but he's single. So my daughter came, and they said, "You cannot stay by yourself."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to the hospital. I had everything prepared. I prepared my house. It was like Hanukkah. I prepared Friday morning. Friday morning, I went to was it Friday or Monday? I went to the Y. I used to go swimming.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the Y, and when I walked in from the shower to the pool, I tripped over
Mm-hmm.
because my right leg is like very crooked. So I tripped over and I fell on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And when I fell on the wall, I broke my hip. And when I went to the hospital, they fixed it,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't go home. So my daughter said, "You're gonna come here."
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I wound up in Baltimore. And it's 3 years now that I'm here. She volunteered, not realizing that's gonna be a lifetime. So I had a house in Bayonne.
Mm-hmm.
I had everything. I had left everything.
Bayonne's in
And
New
it's-
York?
And Bayonne, yeah,
Mhm.
Bayonne, New Jersey.
Oh, New
New
Jersey. New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, I went swimming, I was fine, I came back, I was homeless, I was dead to the world. I couldn't walk up, I couldn't go down,
Mm-hmm.
so she came to the rescue. That's how I wound up over here.
How did you end up in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, because my husband was in business,
Mm-hmm.
he had a meat provision, so he used to work in New York. And then with a partner, they opened up a business, a meat place,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I wound up in Bayonne.
So while he was running the meat business, you continued to work in a factory?
Oh yes,
Okay.
oh yes.
What type of factory were you working in?
I work in Manischewitz.
Okay.
Manischewitz. You wanna write it down?
Sure, yes,
Sure.
yes.
If you was in the stores, matzahs for Passover, you were for Jewish holidays, I worked at Manischewitz.
Would you also mind spelling out the city you lived in New Jersey?
Yeah, Bayonne, New Jersey, yeah.
Mhm.
Do you want to spell out that meat? The name of the meat?
That's Bayonne. Bayonne, New Jersey.
Bayone. Be in New Jersey. Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
I worked there from You know, it started as a joke, Manicheris. My husband, I went to a friend of mine. We went Thanksgiving. We went for Thanksgiving dinner. Her name was also Sala, but her last name was Sala Recce. So we went there for Thanksgiving. And my husband was a comedian, and he was like, I took him seriously, but everybody took him as a comedian. So he said, look at this Sala. She made Thanksgiving, and she's working. I said, Victor, you want me to go to work? He said, yes. Well, my word is holy. When I say yes, my life depends on it. That's how I've been all my life. And I said to Sala, when you go back to work on Monday, ask them if they need somebody. And she asked, and they said yes. And I came home and I said, I'm going to work to Manicheris. I went to work, and Terry was that time, I think. Terry, what were you, in high school? She was in high school, because I was always home with them, because they had nobody. And what year was it? 1966. Okay. And I worked there till, what year did I finish?
You were in your late 70s, I believe.
I was in the 70s, and they loved me there. And I worked nights, and I took care of the house and took care of the kids. And it sounded as a joke. Well, he wasn't making too much money, but I refused to go to work when I wanted to stay home with the kids, because there's no grandparents, there's nobody. I had nobody. It's a matter of fact, when I had my son, I told my son a secret that he didn't know. I told him when I had Philip, I was home, I took care of everything. All the money that I worked, I said to my husband, this is for my children. I got a nice apartment, I bought everything. Then I became pregnant with my daughter, but I had no money. My husband was sick. So
So, did you like working at Manicheris?
yes,
Yes.
yeah, they liked me a lot.
Can I
Well,
ask, is it okay if I ask
Oh,
a
yeah.
question? You said earlier that initially it was hard for you to talk about what happened
Yes.
in Poland. When did you start to talk about what happened to
My daughter.
your daughter?
I still, you see, like, it's already like now, it's like not coming back as fast as it used to before. But I could never speak. I could always talk one-on-one, but I could never talk. When I go to all the functions, like I had friends and they used to say, Sally, why do you torture yourself? I would never miss a story about concentration camp or anything that's written. I have to read it. So I would never talk in front of a lot of people, but one-on-one, I always talk. And if there are stories, I take them personally. I read everything. But it took a long time. But things like took over one after another, you know.
Yeah.
But I used to be like, for instance, now already I think it was easier before. Now like one takes over the other. Then when the husband died, you know, it came, he was sick for a long time. And twice he had open heart surgery. And he died from, and he was, should rest in peace, he was very stubborn. We had the money, but I could never get anybody to help him. It's my job. European men are like this. You marry till death do us part. It's a wife's job to take care. So like one takes over the other one. But no, I go to old cemetery and I talk to them, and well, I live with them. We got all the pictures and everything. Like my daughter has the name for my mother, Toby. My grandson has the name of my little brother. His name was Friedman. He calls himself Ruben. And Miriam too, she was so beautiful. If I did not go to that camp in 41, see, she went in 42. At that time, she could have been saved. But it started like, if she couldn't eat, that's why I wanted to bring her in to be with me, because it's so different. If I am sick, if I don't eat, I get well. I don't even get temperature. With her, if she didn't have food, she would get sick. And also it affected her, it affected thousands who they stopped the period. It didn't affect me because I was still young. But and when I wanted to bring it over, but then when I saw those girls, they break, oh, it was so tragic. It's a lot of stuff was happening there. It's like killing people, watching them. And I had my cousin, her name Fella, she came. Her brother went on a date. And they were coming home from a date, and the Germans were shooting, so he went in to a hall. And the Polish people were very bad to us. And they would come out and they would say to the Germans, there are more Jews. And they were killing like maybe 10 in one shot.
This is
in Poland, in Sosnowiec.
Before you went to the work camp.
Before I went to camp. Yeah. It started from 39. And Poland was the only one. When I meet Hungarian girls, because they were coming to our camp that I found out about my sister, Hungary went into war in 44. We went in 39. We were dead already in 39. So, this is important. In 1939, so when they came in, and they brought in girls from Hungary, beautiful girls with the hair and everything, but they shaved their hairs, so they wouldn't, when they sent them to the gas shavers, probably the hair's in the way, I don't know. So when they came from Hungary to our camp, and the Germans liked it, and they said they're going to shave our hair, because we were not shaved. So he said, Kluger was the boss of the company, and he said, I am not running a zoo here, and if you're going to do that, I'm closing down the factory. That was a German, Kluger, and they didn't cut our hair. And he was like, there were some of them that were good, but very few were bad. So he said, We're not cutting the hair. Because they had prisoners of war. They had the German people working. There was a factory of a few thousand people. So he said, we're not going to cut their hair. So we didn't have the haircut. But everything else they did. Like for instance, if we would come back from work and people were foolish. Somebody, like the prisoners of war, they had freedom. So they would give a girl a piece of bread. And that girl would take the piece of bread, take it home, because she would get hungry at night. They found a piece of bread on her. They shot her, and they punished us every day when we came from work. They would not give us supper. Day in and day out. We go to work, we come home, no supper. And then...
So if someone got caught
yeah,
with food, they
the
would punish
girl got
everyone?
Caught with a piece of bread because she would figure she's going to eat it at night when she gets hungry. So now they would kill her, but we would, because they need us for work, so we would every day after work, we come home. First of all, in the winter, we had to get undressed, stay in the freezing. A lot of people would get sick. And then, after a while, we said already, go ahead and shoot. Who cares? We don't want to live anymore. So shoot. So then finally, they stopped that. So they gave us little torches here and there. And if they would rape a girl, they would shoot her. Because they would say all I had to write down is that she tried to run away. And that was it. So a lot of them were killed, a lot of them. What else would you like to know?
So you're living in Baltimore now. Do you have any connections with any Jewish organizations in the area, or what have you been doing since you've lived in Baltimore?
I go to the, being that I broke the hip and being that I have both legs, both knees are very bad. Very bad. I cannot even walk without anything. So I go swimming, I meet people there. What I don't like organizations is to live through the whole story over and over again. I dream about it, I live with it. So for that reason I cannot join any, because that's all people is talking about this. Oh now for instance, let's see, like I go to the JCC swimming, and the women talk about cooking and this. And here, I feel like concentration started over again when I fell. Because already I know that I went away from Poland naked, and over here was saying I had everything in my own. I had a beautiful home, because we were married over 50 years. I had everything, I had friends in this. You come over here, my daughter means well, but I still like to be a mother, not a boarder. I cannot do nothing. I feel very bad for her. She already now has trouble with her feet. So now I try to get somebody to help her, because she's like around the clock. And she has to, I try to see, so now that I've wanted, to help her a little bit, to help her now with the hand. Before I had my feet. I had my feet, now I have my hand. So I'm getting to be there's sometimes you read in the paper, what's the sense of living? Is that living? But that's what God wants. He doesn't, why I was chosen to be left of all of them, As I quite see that. I was one of the youngest here. They had a life. My sister was married. My brother, everybody had a life. Why was I chosen? I don't know. There's no answer. And then I tried to function. I tried to help. I help organization. But as far as belonging, go through the life, that's not for me. I just like to be left alone. My daughter wanted, as I say, what can I leave her more than that? So I'm doing it more for her because I said, like, for instance, now, you know, like that finger is closing so bad. And the feet are not good, the hands are not good, so I must have done something good in this world that God is still keeping me. I believe wholeheartedly. My mother was religious, my father, everybody. We had a nice life. We weren't rich. I was brought up in a home that you can be hungry all week long. But it comes Shabbos, you cannot, it's got to be everything. We have to have food.
And that's a Jewish holiday, correct?
Yeah.
What would you do for this holiday?
Thank God that we're alive. And they prepare what they can do. And that's it. We had like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I even fasted at my age, and the doctors didn't want me to know. I said I have to.
Did you celebrate any Jewish holidays while you were in camps?
No,
you did not.
we did not even know where we were.
Okay.
Right. No how, we had nothing. The only thing we have, like a rabbi's door and this, the only thing what I would do for them is they wouldn't eat the soup. So I would change with them. I would take their soup and I would give them my bread because they would eat only bread. So with this I did a lot of good. I was still that young and I could help, you know, there was a rabbi's daughter. So, and also they could not work on the Sabbath. So I was so good, I was a premier worker because I was always afraid to be hit. I was afraid they put you in a jungle with threats and all that. So I was always a very, very good worker. So if I wanted like to change, like they called the rabbi's daughter to work on the Sabbath, she's about 13, 14 years old, I'll take her job and let her sit and let her pray. So I did a lot of that in camp, a lot.
Do you have any last remarks you want to say? Anything you want to tell people who may watch your Holocaust testimony later?
We pray to God that it's not going to happen again, that already I paid my dues for my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. Thank God for them. When I go to synagogue, and I go with my family, and I said to everybody, see what Hitler wanted to destroy? He didn't succeed. And that's my prayer. That the world should change and no more hate. There is no reason to hate anybody. And it's getting worse by the minute. And sometimes I pray, I said to myself, I'm glad I'm old because I could not live through that again. Losing the family and everything. And that was so hard to cope with. I look at the kids, I look at the grandchildren, my heart breaks. Because I saw them going into ovens, I saw them being killed. I lived in a building, there were women with 9 kids. They went up to the 5th floor and threw down one kid after another. I could not survive this again. I saw people on the streets They shot him, they killed him, they buried him. I don't wish on anybody to see that there's no hate. Why is there so much hate in this world? I gave up my Jewish religion to help my parents to walk home in peace because they went home from the market and they had a little $2 and they would hit him and take the money. So I would give up my schooling and walk with them. And everybody, the older one went to bigger cities, got married or had jobs. So I was the only one that I was when the war started in 39. And I was born 26, I was 7. So I was the one to take care. My brother, we had a game in the morning. Who's going to dress first? And he was wearing, the tzitzis, and I was wearing the bra. So we were counting what we are wearing. So I have no regrets. I did everything. This is something I think God knew about it, and maybe that's why I'm still around. That's about the answer I have. And I pray to God it shouldn't happen to anybody. I always, not because you were sitting, but I had my best friend Nellie. You look like her.
I do.
Yeah. We were such a good friends. When we used to we worked together for about 30 years. And when her daughter died, I went there to the funeral, and we were such a good friends. And when from the union, we went for a checkup. We would always take her. She was like part of us. And my daughter brought home a girl for Passover. I always loved old people, always. I hate what's going on now in the world.
That's all the questions we have for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us
Oh.
interview.
Thank you so much.
I think it means the world to both of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's
very,
why
very
I
much.
volunteered, because I'm telling you, you would see, I never did it before. Just one-on-one, and this is a pleasure. This is not, and thank God my hand used to close, and it didn't close now.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
nice meeting, and I hope to be around. And if you have any more questions, you can come.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Do you have any